So, hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Tracy Stein. And as always, I'm so happy to be here with you today. You're going to really love today's guest for reasons that will become very apparent in a moment. Dr. Neeta Bhushan, she's really a phenomenon in and of herself. She is a cosmetic dentist who is incredibly successful. She is a 3-time international best-selling author and a noted emotional health advocate. She's the founder of the Global Grit Institute, a wellness education platform for optimizing well-being, and the co-founder of the Dharma Coaching Institute. So Neeta is also the host of the top-rated podcast, The Brave Table. And what she's going to talk about today is really so in line with the overarching kind of aim of this podcast, is how you can listen to your own kind of highest guidance and wisdom and make decisions that might feel frightening in the moment, but really will set you free and help you live the life you're really meant to live and embrace it with joy. So today, Neeta is going to talk about her book that's coming out in January 2023. It's called That Sucked, Now What? How to embrace the joy in chaos and find magic in the mess. Neeta, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh my goodness, Tracy, thank you so much. That's a beautiful intro. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was reading through your book, and again, I can't tell you how many times I was like, yes, that's true. That's it. I wish more people knew this. And so I'm so happy to have you talk about that. I want you to also talk about your journey, which you, I have to say, it's so generous and courageous of you to talk about that as you do in your book. It's just really, it struck me as so not only authentic, but healing in and of itself, because so many people could say, I don't have to be perfect to be wonderful. And I don't have to have a life that was easy in order to kind of, manifest my dreams.
Yeah. I feel like we can probably start there and unpack that. I would probably say, my whole evolution in terms of the realization of my breakdown and the realization of what was next on the horizon was finally admitting to myself on December 31st, 2011, that I was in a toxic and abusive relationship. And up until that point, I felt like I did everything to please everyone else. And that was my, and I guess to give everybody context, my upbringing was Filipino and Indian. My parents were immigrants. My dad was from India. My mom's from the Philippines. So, multicultural, multiracial, ethnic, multiple religions in the house. And so there were expectations. And so for the Asian diaspora, it was mostly like tiger parenting. And so the idea that you have to strive for excellence, strive for success. There was a lot of pride as well, because, you've got to be proud of your heritage and all of the things that were then kind of instilled upon me as the oldest and only girl in the home, but then also the oldest of 2 younger brothers. And so here I am, thinking that I've reached every pinnacle of what I thought in my mind success for, not even a 30-year-old. I had my dental practice that was thriving and flourishing at the time. I had this beautiful home. And what people didn't really know was I did a really good job of hiding my emotions. And I had this like perfection wall, probably because of my profession as well, because I worked in millimeters. But, this wall of perfection of, if I work hard enough, no one will see that I'm broken on the inside. If I strive hard enough, no one's going to see that I'm actually struggling internally, and I am living in fear, and I'm living in the ideation that, what if people would find out, and would I be judged? Because I had built this, practice, and I felt like my identity was kind of attached to it in many ways. And what folks didn't know at the time was I was also really hiding that grief that I had worked so hard to overcome of the loss of my mom, my dad, and my brother, which all happened all before I was 19. And so a decade later, literally in my late 20s, this all came shattering on December 31st, where I'm looking in the mirror thinking, how in the world did I get here? I barely knew who I was, but I thought, from the outside, it looked so good. From the outside, it looked like, wow, she really has gotten through all of the heartache and the turmoil and the awful, wretched pain that, who could have done that at her age and time? Because what I was told when I was little was good girls are, don't cry. Good girls are strong. You're a tough girl. Be that. And so that was the mantra that was writing in my mind of, all right, I've got to be tough. I've got to be tough. I've got to be tough with my mom dying. I've got to be tough with my brother dying. I've got to be tough with my dad dying. And finally, I allowed myself to fully break on December 31st, breaking, meaning that I asked for help. And I asked for help in the form of, I can't do this alone. I let, the closest people in my life, my girlfriend and brother at the time, know, even though they already knew, right? Because the closest people to you already knew. And that began essentially my journey of a decade's worth of healing and really getting into my next chapter of life.
And I'm so struck by, again, I want to use the word courageous, not only because of what you've been through and survived and managed to, make meaning from, and we'll talk about that more in a moment, but, you could have written this book and it still could have been very informative and successful, even without sharing these incredible, not only these traumas, but these moments of feeling insecure or feeling like you were failing, because from the outside, some people will only hear the audio and so they won't see you. So I'm going to kind of describe this a little bit. Some people will see the video and they'll get it right away. But I mean, you present as this person that many people would say, oh, she's just had this perfect trajectory. She's educated and successful and beautiful and engaging. And now she has all of these other things, check, 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 check. And they really, it's so clear in your book that you've done the work.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think I had no choice. There's a concept that I talk about in the book, the bounce factor. And the bounce factor, what I have been able to kind of tie and like interweave all of the lessons in my life, especially culminating at this point, this idea of, okay, there's this through line of resilience that has really marked many moments in my life. And for listeners out there, perhaps many moments in your life. Yeah. And I don't know about you or your listeners, but when I was growing up, resilience after each of those losses, resilience after, not getting into the school that I wanted to get to, or not even being able to go to the schools that I wanted to because I had to stay back and take care of my family and work 3 jobs and all of those things, was resilience meant toughness. And resilience meant, you are mentally tough and you are strong. And at that moment on December 31st, I did not feel strong. I felt like, all of myself was just fully shattered into a million pieces. And when I look back, it's like Neeta 1.0 from what her parents or family or society was saying strength was, all right, that glass, if you take a glass of water and you just drop it, then that glass is going to shatter because it's tough. right? Because it's brittle, because it's strong. But what if you actually took one of those stress balls or a little basketball, and you start to let it go? It won't shatter, it'll bounce. And so the idea of being able to bounce is not just being strong. The idea of being able to bounce, which is, and I'll share what the bounce factor is in just a moment, but the idea of being able to bounce is to actually have that essence of flow, the essence of agility, the essence of flexibility, so that you are not going to break. But in my, in my story, I felt like the break needed to happen so that I can realize, well, that 1.0 of resilience probably wasn't going to be what's going to carry me through the second stage of life, which was, personal responsibility and a lot of the work that I needed to now uncover. But it was also permission that it was okay to break down so that you can build yourself up again in this, 2.0 light. Thus began, this ideation of what the bounce factor is. And the bounce factor is, comprised of these 4 parts, essentially, to build your audacious resilience, and not in the tough way that we all think.
So talk a little bit more about that, because I think you do such a great job in the book of painting a mental picture. And I would love for you to do that now.
Yeah. So this was sparked, in all honesty, from when I was actually doing talks when my first book came out. And my first book was called Emotional Grit. And it came out, in 2016. And I had done so much research because I was so fascinated in my healing journey around how successful people make decisions, how people in different countries make different decisions based on their cultural nuances, because I was from, different backgrounds. And I was also starting to learn how to be a better leader, because I had to rebuild all that confidence that I lost in that marriage, in leaving everything that I knew, the home that I knew, the friends that, we had created together to really rebuild a life fully, completely. And that meant unlearning a lot of the things that that was already programmed in my mind for, decades. And so that meant, diving into all things spiritual, all things science-backed, spending time with different types of people, spending time with different types of healers, therapies, alternative modalities, and really kind of going in to see, well, what else is there? Because as a child, I did do therapy, when my parents were going through their sicknesses. They both had cancers, and that didn't really serve me at the time back then, because I was young and I didn't really understand the fullness of what now, probably 15 years later, could make a little bit more sense. And I wanted to know how others even viewed failures and setbacks and challenges. And so it actually led me to Silicon Valley, where I would meet this mom who, in the Bay Area, there's particular high schools where, kids of tech companies go to, and it's very prominent, very prestigious. And she got a hold of my first book, and, she said, she's like, would you be able to do just a short talk to the moms, here for our school? We just don't know what to do. She's like, I've read your story, and, there's so much that you've been through at a young age. And for all of our kids who are now in high school, we don't even know if they would have been able to stand up on their own 2 feet, let alone thrive like you have. And my question to you is, can you actually build resilience? And my book is called Emotional Grit. And grit, even if they haven't been through something as tough as you, because we've lost a few people to suicide. And these are young people, right? That's the issue that was going on in that community. at the time. And it really struck me because at that point, I was like, absolutely not. Like, we can start teaching resiliency in young people. And the idea of the bounce factor really came through, but I define it in 4 parts. And the first part is really looking at your upbringing. And so this is kind of, what we started out with. It's, let's look into the upbringing. Are you a helicopter parent, or did you have helicopter parents when you were younger? Or did you have to build your street credits on your own? Did you need to, quiet your voice at the dinner table? Because, and I don't know about you, Tracy, but in my household, everybody was not allowed to speak or talk back to the elders. Whereas in some cultures, it's encouraged. Some cultures, they're like, yes, we want to hear what your opinions are. And I think that makes such a huge difference for anyone to start building their confidence. But also, was it deemed appropriate for, women to take on like risks at the dinner table or in their life? Or was it meant for more boys to get it? My brothers could get dirty and do all of those things. But for me, I had to keep my nails clean because I was taking piano lessons, and it had to be, dainty and all of these things. And I was taking ballet. Right. And so, that is the first step, is your upbringing. We can't change it, but we could actually make peace with it and understand, okay, I react X, Y, and Z way, or I've developed this pattern of thinking that, girls aren't supposed to do this, or boys aren't supposed to cry, or in my case, girls aren't supposed to cry, strong girls aren't supposed to cry, right? So it made me have this relationship with these tough emotions that for most people, including the ones that I was speaking to in this, Silicon Valley community, they're taught to bury their emotions. They're taught to distract themselves if something goes wrong, and they're taught to shove it under a rug because we don't talk about those things, because we strive for excellence and keep moving forward. Right. And so then they're so ashamed of failures because there's no room or normalcy to really talk about it, that they feel like they have to take their own life. And I mean, this is a very extreme case, but I'm sharing it because it really was the inspiration for, well, let me just go deeper in that. What does that actually even mean? And can this be the case? And so
I love
that's
that
the
you're
first
talking
part.
about this.
Yeah, well, I think that even in the past few years, right, Tracy, like mental health has been, 1 in 3 people we're struggling with mental health and our own mental health issues, whether it's depression, anxiety is huge, overwhelm. And I think societally in our culture, we're taught, all right, we can do more. let's keep going, which is great. And I also want to say that, the part of which is why I chose the title, right? That sucked is part 1. That sucked. And then now what is part 2? But most people will just say, that sucked, now what? Right. And that's a lot of us folks who are like, all right, let's see the silver lining. Let's see. And that's great. That was my coping mechanism. Toxic positivity was my coping mechanism for a very, very long time. Yet I want to give everyone permission to add the bridge between that sucked and now what? And the bridge is the vulnerability. That's the vulnerability that we're all missing. The honesty of,
yes,
yeah, wow, that really did suck. That really did suck that she didn't come to the thing that I worked so hard on and I wanted her to be there, or the opportunity that came, but wow, it was just snatched from me and I didn't get that promotion. Wow, like I felt really hurt when you talked to me in this way, right? To be able to lean into those. And I'm talking about, we were just talking about big T traumas, but I'm talking about even the small everyday nuances where we shy away from these difficult conversations because we don't want to rock the boat, because somebody believes one way and another person believes one way. And I'm like, just let's lean into it, because what is that curiosity that we can gain from the second part of the bounce factor is diving into good stress. I think the other thing that I've noticed, Yeah, sure. So the other thing that I noticed in the last few years is people were getting complacent, right? Even myself. Uh, I didn't have to go to do keynotes anymore, right? I was able to have my, pajama pants on my bottoms, and you don't have to leave your house if you don't want to ever. And where is that resiliency in being able to then relate with other people if we're avoiding them altogether? Because we can order Uber Eats, Amazon, Target to our house. We never have to leave. So why would we, right? And so I think for women in general, we need that connection. We need that community. Yet I want to kind of just paint a picture here. For most people, we then forget. And then because of the complacency, we get afraid that, I can't do that. Going to a networking event and introducing myself to 3 people that I don't know, no way, absolutely not. Well, you want to go build this thing. Well, you want to see your possibility in what you can create, right? You said you wanted to do that side gig, or you said you wanted to do that thing. Now you're an empty nester. Now the kids are grown up. What are you going to focus on? No, it's too late for me. It's too late. I've lost my way. It's not meant for me anymore. Well, how we build resilience is that exposure to good stress. It's how we're actually building muscle. And from, the physical aspect of it is, sure, go to the gym, lift some weights, right? You'll start to build that muscle in your biceps. We already know that, right? Strength training is important. All right. What about the emotional 6-pack? What about the emotional strength of speaking your voice even when there may be rejection? Speaking your voice even when somebody will probably disagree with you. That is the good stress that I want everybody to lean into. That's the good stress. That's number 2 in building and increasing your bounce factor. And that's what most people are missing. I'll tell you the third thing most people are missing, which is part of the bounce factor, is their emotional capacity to feel. Now, there's 2 schools of camp, Tracy. There's a school of camp that we're taught, okay, I'm not going to feel these feels. I was told that, I have to be happy all the time, right? And so they are not okay in expressing their anger, because prim and proper women, polite women do not get angry. And I feel like I've read memes like that, or even, it's like a grandmother saying, but no, it's like a very, one of those 50s, like 1950s, like commercials that you see where it's like the woman does not, I don't know if you've ever watched the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
I'm the only person in
What?
America who has not seen it.
Oh
I need to get out there more. But as you're talking, I'm thinking of people, how devaluing they are of women who express their anger, right? We're not supposed to. There's all kinds of nasty names for us if we say stuff people don't want to hear.
Absolutely. Or we're called bitches, or we're called, really nasty things. God forbid if we are human and actually get upset. And in the book, I have these emotional release practices to help retrain us, or to help us unlearn, and to actually activate all aspects of our emotions. Because if we are able to increase our capacity for feeling upset about something and actually really feeling it, I think the second camp of people are the ones who actually create their livelihood around that problem, and they get stuck in the suck. For most of us, we don't even give ourselves time to feel the stuck in the suck. And that's most of the people that I'm talking to. But then we know we all have that good friend who just everything is like not going well for them. And it's constantly a battle, and it's constantly, nothing is ever right. And you're like, I don't even know how to help this person anymore. They are stuck in the suck. Okay.
Yes.
It's okay for them to feel all of the big feelings, because that's what they've revolved their life around. And that can be addicting. So we can be addicted to, the
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to say, and because we don't want to look like we're lacking compassion, but it is addictive for some people, and it is really hard to break that.
I mean, and honestly, even in my own story, I could have been addicted to, because of the pattern of so many losses and the things that didn't go well in my life. I could have just said, gosh, life is so hard. It really, this is not meant for me. None of it is meant for me. I'm not able to find love. Like, look at who I am, right? But I think there's a way of saying, gosh, that really sucked. And I have to really feel what I'm feeling right now. And it's okay to feel sad. And then we jump into the now what part of, all right, okay, we felt it. I've felt it in my body. I've allowed an emotional release, which there's, 5 ways to feel the feels when you're actually going through something, and a whole process, right? That I kind of alluded to, that's in the book. But then we get into the 4th part of the bounce factor is your recognition. It's your radical self-awareness, your RSA, your radical self-awareness of your recognition of, okay, what's your part in this? My part in my failed marriage was the fact that I just wanted to recreate a family that I'd lost. And I was willing to sacrifice myself at all odds just to gain that love and validation from somebody else, instead of really focusing it on me. Right. And so that was the work. But that's that part where we go in another notch and say, am I really jealous of what that person's been able to accomplish? Or am I just seeing that I'm not able to see it in myself yet? And so I'm projecting that into the friend instead of thinking, well, there's enough for all of us. And why am I not living up to my full potential? But then I'm trying to make my friend feel bad for living their best life, right? It's the personal attunement to paying attention to what is working and what's not working, to, okay, all right, I'm doing that pattern again. Why is that? What is coming up for me? And to take notice and to take stock of, some of these things that are either hardwired because of our upbringing, or are we so afraid to feel because we are afraid of feeling hurt, or those pains that are coming up that we fully haven't integrated yet, because then it's going to be a trigger when somebody says something to you and then you're going to get reactive. That's a telltale sign that, oh, okay, there's something there that I still probably need to work on.
I love that you really, and again, I said this before, but obviously you're a very accomplished woman and you're a highly educated woman, but you didn't start out as a psychologist, and yet you have really done the work of looking into human psychology, as you've just mentioned, and saying, why is this? What is the problem with this? And how can we extricate ourselves from this? And I'm thinking in your book, you talk about, you alluded to this, and I just want to highlight this again, because it is so hard when things are going badly, or when we have had an upbringing that did not prime us to be psychologically resilient or believe we are deserving of success. And you talk about, in one of your chapters, being a victim versus having a victim mentality. And I just want to make it clear that this is a book that I think is written with compassion, with humor and compassion and humanity. And you talk about how what you're not saying to people is you have to negate the things that have been incredibly difficult or traumatic. But what you're saying is, honestly, whether it's fair or not, we're the only ones who can liberate ourselves from that prison of feeling like I can't, and I will never be able to, and I'm not deserving of. And I really just want to say you do that in a way that's so approachable.
Thank you. Yes, I actually, that was one of the gray chapters that are, like kind of a sidebar. And when I was actually writing it, we weren't going to add that all together. And I was like, absolutely not. This needs to be there because people need to know that, while it's a book about building resilience, right? And in the ways of embracing the duality. It's why the subtitle is how to embrace, the magic in the mess and find joy, find joy in chaos, right? And I think that we forget that it's not just black and white. It's not just, he cheated on me and therefore I'm leaving. And I'm never going to find love again. It could be all of those things can coexist all at the same time. And, I think that many times when we're talking about even that sucked part, I'm giving people permission. Fine. You want to, yes, you can be in that victim if those things have happened to you, right? Because that's the victim state many times of like, oh, that sucked. This constantly happens to me. And then we go into our spiral. Nothing's good for me. The world is out to get me. I'm not going to amount to anything, et cetera, et cetera. That's our victim spiral, right? And that's the victim mindset. The victor mindset, which is like the hero, is okay, it's the now what part. It's all right, let's go. What's next? What's next? And you see athletes and really high achievers doing that so much until there's something that actually happens, sometimes physically, sometimes it's a medical diagnosis, sometimes it's an actual trip and fall to help them recenter because they're just so quick to do and not stop, right? And the middle piece of that is that vulnerability piece, is to be able to have both and say, wow, okay, this is a really tough time for me. I'm going to really need your support. And I am going to take incremental steps to focus on my healing of whatever that looks like, right? It's the and part. It's the acknowledgement, which most people don't do. And then it's the and of, okay, now what's going to be next? And this chapter in and of itself was so important because, me having been through this, and I'm sure many of your listeners having been through something really tough, something really hard, especially if there was trauma or, sexual abuse, violence, et cetera. In those cases, yes, you absolutely are, the victim there. And we start from that place. Hopefully in the tools in the book, I give you many of them so that we can end with that survivor mindset. If not, we get into, part 3 of the book, where we get into the thriving mindset, because there's 3 different mindsets, right? The victim, why did this happen to me? The survivor, okay, this happened and I lived through it. Like anybody who's lived through an oppressive state, an oppressive time, you always heard any of my friends whose family members were in the Holocaust, they survived through that. They lived through that to tell you the other side of that, right? But then the thriving state is really all right, I'm flourishing. It's not even about me anymore. It's not even about my story anymore. It's about how my story can actually activate other people or give others permission to share theirs as well. And it comes from a place of, like you said, from a place of compassion, knowing that there's possibilities out there, for those of you who are listening, who are open to it, and if it's resonating with you.
Oh, I love that. Neeta, tell me, is there something that we haven't talked about the book or your work that we should be talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, for anyone listening, and I know that there just comes a point where if you've been through a lot of life, or maybe you're just starting to get through these moments of difficulty or moments of resistance, maybe resistance in the job, or resistance in maybe your next chapter, your next evolution, we always think the resistance is an indication that something's not working out, that something isn't going to work out. But I want us to, and I hope everybody listening to this can think of, what if that resistance means that it's requiring you to up level in some way? Maybe it's up leveling your bounce factor. Maybe it's taking a look at, all right, what else do I need to make peace with in my upbringing? What else do I need to pay attention to that I'm not? My awareness, my radical self-awareness. What else do I need to feel so that I can allow what is next to birth out? And what am I not exposing myself to? The good stress that actually can help me build incrementally over time, so that I can reframe whatever resistance is in my life to, okay, bring it on, because I'm going to bounce, and I'm not going to just bounce back, but I'm going to fly forward, knowing that there is that possibility on the other side. It's coming.
So well said, and such a great book. I'm super excited for it to come out. Neeta, I want to be mindful of your time, but tell us where the best places are to learn more about you, your coaching, your work, your books, your podcast.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, for those of you who are really curious about building your emotional management skills and you want to start, 101, I have a gift for your audience, Tracy, that they can actually, so they can actually start for free. And basically it's my emotional guidebook, and it's several pages, but we go into a lot of the tiny prompts that we've been talking about all throughout. And it's at Global Grit. That's GLOBALGRIT.co/EG guidebook. And for those of you who are super curious about the book, I would love, That Sucked Now What is the URL. So it's thatsuckednowwhat.com. And when you actually do order a book, pre-order, and this is all for pre-orders, but when you order, you unlock 3 free bonuses, which includes my 5-day healing journey.
Yay.
So it's every day. We start with a healing practice. So we start with day 1, we heal your relationships and all of the ones, because we all know, from love to life to business to friendships to children dynamics, there's so much there to heal, even though maybe you're in a good place, but it's always something to kind of look back at. And then day 2, get into our optimum health and vitality from a place of our emotional health, our mental health, and our full body, vitality. And then day 3, we get into the abundance, but we can't unlock the abundance if we have fear stories and belief stories in our mind. And then we get into day 4 on taking action, brave and courageous action. And then day 5, we bring it home to ourselves. How are we going to shift that in our life? And it's a very beautiful practice. I know that everyone and all your listeners are really going to love it. So that's when you actually pre-order the book, thatsuckednowwhat.com. And I'm at Neeta Bhushan everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I have a lot of free content there as well.
That is just wonderful. And I'm going to put this information in the show notes. But Neeta, so nice to meet you. I'm so excited that you were able to come on the show. And everyone, this has been another episode of Unpacking Possibility. If you liked what you heard, and I'm sure you did, please remember to like, share, and follow. And until next time, be well.